I wasn't supposed to be home that night. The plan was simple. San Diego, 3 days tech conference. I'd packed light, just a carry-on, a pair of slacks I didn't mind wrinkling, my presentation notes, and a book I probably wasn't going to read. Jane dropped me at the airport that morning with her usual kiss on the cheek, a soft good luck, and that distant half-smile she'd been wearing more and more lately. I should have noticed then, but I didn't. I told myself she was just tired. It wasn't until I was sitting at gate C-23, halfway through a cold sandwich, when the first announcement came. Flight 2478 to San Diego has been delayed due to severe weather conditions. The second announcement, about 45 minutes later, canceled the flight altogether. Just like that, my trip, and my excuse for being gone, was gone. It was already dark by the time I grabbed a pizza and a bottle of wine from the place near the train station. Jane always said their pizza reminded her of our first date, even though I'm pretty sure we had sushi that night. Didn't matter. It was one of those stories we'd quietly revised over the years. The kind couples tell so often it becomes the truth. I parked down the street instead of pulling into the driveway, thinking I'd sneak in through the side door and surprise her. I wasn't ready for the surprise I walked into. The house was lit up like she was expecting company. I could see the glow of the living room lamp through the curtains, warmer than usual. I paused on the porch for a second, then quietly slid my key into the lock, pushed open the side door, and stepped inside. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Hers. But not the kind I'd heard in months. It was soft and flirty, almost musical, the kind of laugh that makes people lean in closer. And then came the man's voice, low, casual, confident. Unfamiliar. I froze in the hallway. He said something I couldn't quite make out, but I caught the tone. It wasn't casual. It was int**** mate. Too int** mate for someone who wasn't me. Jane answered with a quiet chuckle. Stop, she said, light and teasing. You're such an idiot. That voice. That version of her. I hadn't heard it in a long time. I edged closer, standing just behind the hallway door. It was cracked open an inch or two, just enough to see the back of the couch. Jane's arm draped lazily over the cushion, her wine glass resting in her fingers like it belonged there. The man was just out of sight, but I heard every word. You always look good in red, he said, his voice smooth. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. You remember that? Of course I do. How could I forget? She laughed again. Not loud, just soft and pleased, like someone being seen. I felt the pizza box slip slightly in my grip, my knuckles tightening to keep hold of it. I was still holding the damn wine bottle too, half wrapped in a paper bag like some desperate afterthought. I didn't move. I just listened. They talked for another few minutes, harmless stuff technically, but it wasn't what they were saying. It was how they were saying it. The tone, the rhythm, the familiarity. The kind of coded comfort that doesn't exist between casual friends. And then the scrape of the coffee table. He stood up. Keys jingled. Coat was zipped. Drive safe, Jane said as she walked him to the front door. Her voice was sweet. Sweet in that particular way women talk when they don't want the night to end. See you soon, he replied. The door clicked shut, and I just stood there. I counted to 10, then 20. Then I stepped into the living room like I had just walked in. As if I hadn't been standing there for 5 full minutes watching the woman I married speak in a voice that didn't belong to me anymore. Jane turned and jumped. Her hand flew to her chest. Sam. Jesus, you scared me. I forced a smile. Flight got canceled. Weather's a mess out there. I figured I'd come home. Surprise you. She was already composing herself. Her shock evaporated in a breath, replaced by a perfectly smooth expression. Oh, she said, as if it were no big deal. I wish you'd called. I would have cleaned up a bit. She was dressed in a fitted black blouse and dark jeans. Nothing scandalous, but too carefully chosen for a night alone. Her makeup was still fresh, lips painted in a bold shade of red I hadn't seen in weeks. She used to wear that color when we'd go out for date nights. Now it felt like she was wearing it for someone else. I nodded toward the coffee table. Company. She didn't flinch, just smiled. Trevor. From work. He's going through a breakup. He stopped by to talk. Trevor, I repeated, feigning recognition. You've met him, she said too quickly. At that holiday thing, remember? He brought those weird cinnamon cookies? Nope, never heard of him. I looked at the 2 wine glasses on the table. Both half empty. One of them with a faint lipstick stain on the rim, bright red, same as hers. Rough breakup, I said. Yeah, she nodded, pouring herself more wine like nothing was off. He just needed someone to talk to. We've been friends for a while. Funny, I said, setting the pizza down on the counter. Don't remember you ever mentioning him. She shrugged. I don't tell you every little office story, Sam. That much was true. Lately, she didn't tell me much of anything at all. Still, I didn't push. I just stood there watching her. She was too calm, too put together, like this whole story had already been rehearsed. You know, I said casually, most people don't open wine for a quick friendly visit. She didn't blink. It's not a crime to offer a friend a drink, is it? No, I admitted. Not at all. She smiled then, sweetly. You're being weird. I didn't respond. She walked over, slid her arms around me, and pressed a kiss to my cheek. Her lipstick left a faint red mark. I could smell her perfume, stronger than usual. New maybe, not the kind she used to wear for me. I'm glad you're home, she whispered, and I just stood there, letting her hug me, feeling like I was watching a play I hadn't auditioned for. An understudy to a life I used to be the star of. She turned back toward the kitchen, humming softly, opening drawers like it was just another night. Like she didn't notice that I hadn't put my suitcase down. Like she didn't care that the pizza had gone cold in my hands. Something had shifted. Not just in the room. In her. In us. And the worst part? She knew I suspected something. And she was completely unbothered by it. After that night, something in me refused to go back to sleep. Not literally, though sure, I wasn't sleeping much either, but I mean the part of me that used to make excuses. The part that used to brush things off, to believe Jane's words just because I wanted them to be true. That part of me had been slowly dying for months. That night, it got buried. I didn't bring it up again. I didn't mention Trevor. I didn't ask why he was there, or why their conversation had felt like something out of a private dinner date rather than a casual chat between friends. I didn't need her answers anymore. I needed to observe. And once I started looking, really looking, I saw everything. It was like turning on a black light in a hotel room. You don't want to know what's there, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. First, it was her schedule. She used to work out in the mornings, yoga in the living room with a 10-minute YouTube warm-up and a podcast. Suddenly, she switched to evening sessions at some new gym. Kickboxing, she said. Said it helped her feel strong again. Strange how she came home from those workouts looking like she'd just stepped out of a photo shoot. Full makeup, hair somehow still flawless. And always with a faint cloud of expensive perfume. That wasn't sweat I was smelling. That was preparation. And the gym? I drove past it once. Just once. Out of curiosity. The parking lot was half empty at 7:15 p.m. And the place didn't even look open. Lights were off. Closed sign hung crooked in the front window. When I asked how class went, she smiled and said, exhausting. Sure it was. Then came her phone. It used to sit on the kitchen counter, face up, buzzing with group texts from her sister, shopping deals, meal reminders. She never used to care about privacy, we'd even shared passwords. But now, it was glued to her palm like a second limb. Always face down. Screen locked. Notifications silenced. One night, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the table. Reflexively, I glanced at the screen. The name, Trevor. The message preview, had a great time today, still smiling. And then, like an idiot, I dropped the phone trying to pick it up. She came out a minute later, towel wrapped around her head, humming to herself. Saw me in the kitchen, phone now safely back on the table. Her eyes flicked to it just a beat too long, then back to me. Everything okay? She asked. Yep, I said, pouring myself a glass of water with hands I couldn't quite keep steady. She said nothing more, just smiled. That I'm not worried at all smile. That was the moment I knew she had the upper hand. She wasn't afraid of me finding out, because she thought I'd never actually do anything. And if I did, she had her story already prepared. I told you about Trevor. He's just a friend. You're being paranoid, Sam. She was always one step ahead. But that just made me start stepping more carefully. I started paying attention to the small things. The things that no longer made sense. Her wardrobe, for one. Jane used to live in oversized sweatshirts and soft leggings, cozy, functional stuff. But lately, she had a sudden love for statement pieces. Tight skirts, off-the-shoulder tops, heels she hadn't worn since our honeymoon. When I joked, "What's the occasion?" she said, "Self-care, babe. I'm allowed to look good for me." Sure. Except she wasn't looking at me when she said it. She was looking at her reflection in the oven door, adjusting her lipstick. Then there was the food. I started finding takeout receipts in the trash. Names of places I didn't recognize. Restaurants she never mentioned. Once, I found a bag from a place across town. Somewhere I knew she'd never willingly drive to alone. When I asked her about it, she said, "Oh, I stopped by on the way home last Thursday. I was craving Thai." Funny thing, that was the night she came home late and told me she skipped dinner entirely because she wasn't feeling great. Even her car smelled different. That soft vanilla scent she used to keep in the glove box had been replaced by something muskier, more masculine. One day, I sat in the driver's seat while she ran into the pharmacy. There, half tucked under the passenger seat, a man's hoodie, not mine, navy blue, size large, slight cologne scent I didn't recognize. When I brought it up later, she laughed. "That must be my brother's. Remember? He helped me move those boxes last month." Except her brother lives 3 states away and hasn't visited in over a year. Little lies. Smooth ones. Too smooth. But the worst part? It wasn't just the clues I was finding. It was what I started losing. Her voice, her affection, her habits. It was like living with someone in witness protection. Same face, same smile. But the soul behind it had packed up and left. She used to sit beside me on the couch, legs tangled with mine, mindlessly touching my arm while we watched something dumb on Netflix. Now, she sat on the far end, phone in hand, laughing at messages I couldn't see. She used to ask about my day. Not anymore. Used to tell me about her dreams, her weird thoughts, the annoying woman at the grocery store. Now silence. I tested it one night. Told her I might be getting laid off. It wasn't true. I just wanted to see if she'd flinch. She barely looked up. "Oh wow, that S***CKs. Let me know if you need help updating your resume." Then she went back to her phone. No concern. No follow-up. Just another flicker in her day. Later that same evening, I walked into our bedroom and caught her standing by the window, back turned, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was low, soft, gentle. Familiar, but not the version of her she gave to me anymore. When she noticed me, she jumped and ended the call in a heartbeat. "Who was that?" I asked casually. "Oh, just Rachel. Girl talk." I nodded, pretending to believe it. But I knew something Jane didn't. Rachel and I had spoken 2 days earlier about Jane's birthday surprise. Rachel was out of town, had been all week. And the birthday surprise? I canceled it. Quietly. I couldn't stomach planning something for someone who was already unwrapping secrets on her own time. Everything started folding in on itself. My memories of her, of us, began to rot from the inside. Even the good ones. Our anniversary trip to Oregon? She had taken suspiciously long walks alone every morning. Said it was me time. Said she was journaling. Her weekend girls' retreats? The names of her supposed friends never showed up in tagged photos. When I checked her Instagram once, yes, I stooped that low. She wasn't even listed in their stories. When I asked how the retreat went, she said, "Relaxing. We did yoga, a digital detox." When I asked to see photos, she said, "Oh, I didn't take any." That was the point. Every word from her mouth was a perfectly stitched excuse. She was so good at lying. It scared me. Not because she was fooling me, but because I could see how easily she fooled herself. One night, I stared at her while she slept. I watched her chest rise and fall, the peacefulness of it, and I couldn't stop asking myself the same question over and over again. How long have you been gone, Jane? Because I knew then, whatever was left between us, whatever thread I had been clinging to, it wasn't enough. She wasn't mine anymore, and maybe she hadn't been for a long time. I didn't want to believe it until I saw it. Not just texts, not perfume, not receipts or changed routines. I needed a moment so brutally clear that even my own stubbornness couldn't twist it into something else. That's how denial works. You bend facts until they no longer resemble the truth. But what I saw that night, there was no bending that. Jane told me she had a corporate event, some rooftop dinner at a trendy restaurant downtown. Strictly employees, she said. No plus ones. Kind of an internal networking thing. She said it casually, like she was just ticking off her calendar. But something in the way she told me, without hesitation, without over-explaining, felt suspicious. It was too clean. No flinching. No searching for the right words. Like a speech she'd practiced in the mirror. Want me to drop you off? I asked, careful to sound indifferent. She shook her head. Already got a ride. Company carpool. Of course she did. I said nothing. Just nodded. Smiled. Told her to have fun. I even offered her a light kiss at the door. She accepted it like someone who was trying to appear normal. But here's the thing, my company does regular work for that venue. We set up their tech systems, including the cameras. I've been inside the AV booth before. I know where the blind spots are, but I also know where the perfect vantage points are. Places where you can see everything without being seen. So yeah, I went. I didn't sneak in like a jealous husband. I walked in like a technician checking on equipment. Clipboard in hand. Neutral expression. Business casual jacket. No one questioned me. The rooftop was decked out in lights, soft jazz playing from hidden speakers, waitstaff gliding between guests with trays of drinks. I made my way to the tech booth off to the side, closed the door behind me, pulled up a stool and looked through the one-way glass window. And then I waited. About 30 minutes in, I saw her. Jane. Hair pulled back, lips painted wine red, black dress, sleek, low-backed. The same one she wore on our anniversary last year. The one that made me forget how to speak when she stepped out of the hotel bathroom. She wore it tonight, but not for me. She walked in like she belonged there, scanning the room, looking effortlessly composed. She wasn't looking for coworkers or checking her phone. She was looking for someone specific. And then she found him. Trevor. The so-called coworker. The friend going through a breakup. The man I was supposed to believe was just someone who gave her rides, shared wine, and apparently remembered what lipstick she used to wear. He was waiting near the back, drink in hand, leaning casually against a glass railing. When she saw him, she lit up. Not a polite smile, not a colleague nod. No. She smiled like someone who just found the part of their night they'd been waiting for. She walked straight into his space. He met her with open arms, pulled her in. Not a handshake, not a pat on the back. His hand rested low on her waist, fingers flexing slightly. She didn't step back. He leaned in, said something against her ear. She laughed, and then she touched his arm in that way. You know the way. The kind of touch you only give someone when there's history behind it or hope. I watched the two of them for over an hour. Not out of morbid curiosity. Out of necessity. I needed the whole picture. The details. The undeniable truth. They didn't make a scene. They weren't careless. But the familiarity between them was thick. She leaned in when he spoke. She laughed too easily. She didn't check her phone once. She wasn't pretending to be someone's wife that night. She didn't even pretend I existed. I watched her dance with him, her hand trailing down his shoulder. A slow song started, one of those soft, romantic ones. He pulled her close, one hand at the small of her back, the other holding hers. Their bodies moved like they had done this before, like this wasn't new. At one point, a woman in their group said something to Jane. I couldn't hear it, but I saw her mouth move. She said something about me. I knew because Jane's lips formed the words. Oh, my husband? He hates parties. He's probably at home watching some nature documentary. Then she laughed. She actually laughed. I stood there watching her look around the room afterward. Her gaze passed right over the tech booth. Didn't even pause. I didn't exist in her world anymore. Not in that dress. Not on that rooftop. Not in her mind. She was someone else now. And I was just a name she used for cover. I stood up. Didn't say a word. Didn't make a scene. I slipped out the back like I was never there. No one noticed me leave. No one even knew I had come. On the drive home, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even grip the steering wheel like they do in movies. I just drove. Windows down. Cold air flooding the car. Silence pressing against my temples like a weight. I had all the confirmation I needed. I had known for a while, quietly, in that place behind your ribs where truth settles before your brain catches up. But this was different. This was final. When I got home, Jane still wasn't back. Her glass of wine from earlier was still on the counter. The one with the red lipstick. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at it, like it was a monument to something dead. I thought about the lies, the long drives, the kickboxing classes, the missing hoodie, the phone turned face down. All the red flags I had folded into paper cranes and tried to float down a stream of denial. They didn't float. They sank. Later that night, she walked in. Keys jingling, heels clicking, perfume sweeping into the house like a stranger before her. "Hey," she said, smiling. "You're still up." I nodded. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." She walked over and kissed my head. "I'm exhausted." It was nonstop networking. "Bet it was," I said quietly. She froze just for a second, almost imperceptible. Then she caught herself. "I think I'm just going to crash. You good?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm good." She disappeared upstairs, humming to herself. And I just sat there, alone, awake, smiling even, because now I didn't need to guess anymore. I had seen it with my own eyes. No interpretation, no debate, no hope left to confuse the facts. Jane was gone. Her body might have been upstairs. But the woman I married, she had vanished long before I ever stepped into that booth. I didn't blow up. That was the surprising part. There was no scene, no yelling, no late-night confrontation or shattered wine glass, no pacing the floor demanding to know why. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a performance. Not because I was numb, and not because I didn't care, but because everything inside me had moved beyond shock. Anger was a luxury for people who still believed something could be salvaged. I was already past that. She came home from the rooftop event and went to bed like she'd just wrapped up a quarterly report. I stood at the sink for maybe 20 minutes after, staring at my reflection in the dark window. I saw a version of myself I didn't recognize, too still, too quiet. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I didn't make a fuss about it, either. I waited until she was out cold. Makeup wiped off, hair wrapped, phone charging on her side, and I walked out to the guest room and closed the door behind me. No words. In the morning, I was already dressed when she came downstairs. "Why'd you sleep in the guest room?" she asked, sipping her coffee like she was trying to sound casual. I didn't look up from my laptop. Just couldn't fall asleep. Didn't want to wake you. She nodded slowly, eyeing me for a beat too long. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." She seemed satisfied with that. Or maybe she wasn't. Honestly, I couldn't tell anymore. I'd forgotten what real concern from her even sounded like. The rest of the week was silent. Not because we were fighting, but because we were pretending. Or at least she was. She told me about some meeting that went well. She mentioned a sale on throw blankets. Left post-its on the fridge that said things like, "Love you," and "Don't forget eggs." Cute little tokens of a marriage she had already vacated. I played along. I nodded when I was supposed to, laughed at the appropriate times. I let her believe I was still beneath the spell of her performance. Let her keep thinking I hadn't noticed the gaps in her story, the cracks in her schedule, the lipstick on the second wine glass. But behind the scenes, I was working. Not emotionally, tactically, First, the smart lock. We had one of those keypad entry systems. Each user has their own code. A little convenience turned into a forensic gift. Jane told me she lost her key fob 3 months ago. She'd made a big deal out of it. "I'm so forgetful," she'd said. "Can we disable it before someone finds it and breaks in?" I said sure. I deactivated the fob. Or at least she thought I did. What I actually did was track its use. According to the log, that fob had been used 7 times over the past month. Every time was between 10:30 p.m. and 1 a.m. On nights Jane swore she was staying late at the gym or going to dinner with Rachel. Funny thing, Rachel's social media showed she was in Atlanta during 2 of those nights. Next, the cameras. I never told Jane, but after we got broken into 2 years ago, I installed a hidden camera above the garage entrance. Just a small one, barely visible, motion-triggered. We used it for package theft deterrence mostly. She forgot it existed. I pulled up the footage. Hours worth of grainy night video. Most of it was uneventful. Until it wasn't. There she was, Jane, unlocking the garage door wearing my hoodie. The same old gray one she used to complain made her look homeless. She was barefoot, smiling, and right behind her, Trevor, holding a bottle of wine and what looked like takeout. He wasn't even trying to be subtle. He walked in behind her like he'd done it before, like he belonged there. That was the part that got me. Not the betrayal. Not even the smile. The routine of it. The comfort. Like our house had become their second home. Over the next 3 nights, I didn't confront her. I watched. Logged timestamps. Saved clips. I started a file on my hard drive titled J Evidence. Inside, I stored screen grabs, footage exports, smart lock entries, even notes I made on my phone. Dates. Times. Quotes. I felt nothing while doing it. No grief. No anger. Just focus. I was building a case. Not for revenge. But for precision. Jane had played her role well. She was careful. Controlled. But like all people who believe they're smarter than everyone else, she got lazy. She overplayed her confidence. She assumed I'd never question her. That I'd never prepare for a war she didn't see coming. So I prepared quietly. And while I was at it, I made a call. A friend of a friend knew a lawyer. Not the billboard type. No flashy office. No slogan about fighting for you. This guy worked out of a brick building downtown with no sign on the door. His name was Jonathan Bailey. I met with him on a Wednesday. Told him everything. He didn't interrupt. Didn't nod. Just listened. The kind of listening that unnerves people because it feels too thorough. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "You're going to want this clean. Fast. No emotional theatrics." I nodded. He opened a drawer and slid over a list. "Here's what we'll do." And that's how it started. Within days, we moved the business into a holding company. All joint assets were restructured. Jane's name was scrubbed from anything that mattered. She thought she still had legal ties to my business. She didn't. Not anymore. Jonathan found old interview clips from a podcast Jane did 2 years ago where she said, laughing, "Oh, this is all Sam's thing. I just support him." That one sentence, it became our argument's backbone. At home, I continued the act. Jane suggested a trip. Just the 2 of us, maybe Napa? She left a sticky note on my steering wheel that said, "Dinner on me tonight." She even sent a meme one afternoon that said, "Still picking you." I replied with a heart emoji. She had no idea. Because here's what I realized. She didn't love me anymore. Maybe she hadn't for a long time. But she loved the appearance of us. She loved the story. The Pinterest board of our life. The clean living room and our Instagram anniversary photos and the way people said couple goals in the comments. She wanted to cheat within the structure. Not break it. Just bend it. I wasn't interested in playing the supporting role in her carefully managed lie. I wanted her to feel the collapse. But I didn't want to scream it into existence. I wanted her to watch it happen in silence. The way she made me watch our marriage rot in silence. So I smiled. I took her to dinner. I let her choose the wine. I watched her reapply her lipstick in the car mirror, knowing it wasn't for me. I sat across from her while she showed me a reel of someone's engagement and said, "Can you believe people still do flash mobs?" And I laughed, like a man who wasn't holding the blueprint for her unraveling in his glove box. That night, I lay beside her in bed, staring at the ceiling while she drifted off beside me. The woman I once loved, who now curled into me like muscle memory out of habit, not affection. She breathed soft and even. She didn't know, but soon she would. The most dangerous lie Jane ever told wasn't the one about Trevor. It wasn't even the cover stories she spun like bedtime tales. It was the lie she told herself, that I wouldn't notice, wouldn't fight back, wouldn't leave. But by the time she handed me a color-coded itinerary for a romantic weekend up north, I was already 3 steps ahead. The night before, I'd had my final meeting with Jonathan Bailey. He sat across from me in his office. Same blank walls, same hum of the old ceiling fan, and laid out the final pieces like a blueprint for escape. "Her name is off everything," he said, flipping through the paperwork. "The LLC is shielded. The assets are protected. We even scrubbed your personal accounts of any shared payment history. The judge will see this as an individual effort, not a joint operation." I nodded. "What about the house?" "Working on it. Since your name was primary and the deed is clean, we'll offer her a buyout clause. If she pushes for equity, we use the security footage, the messages, the audio, and the lock logs." "Will that be enough?" He looked at me, calm as ever. "It'll be more than enough. This isn't about sympathy. It's about structure. You have a timeline. You have a digital footprint. You have her own words on public record saying the business is yours." He pulled a manila envelope from a drawer and handed it to me. "These are the preliminary divorce papers. No court filing yet. Just the draft. When you're ready, we'll serve her discreetly. My guy can do it by appointment." I didn't take the envelope right away. Instead, I looked out the window behind him. A pigeon was sitting on the ledge, head tilted, watching the street. "Are you sure this won't turn into a war?" I asked. Jonathan leaned back and tapped the folder. "You already won. She just doesn't know it yet." When I got home, Jane was folding laundry on the couch. My hoodie, the one she used to mock, was now somehow her favorite thing to wear. She caught my eye and smiled like we hadn't been lying to each other for weeks. "I was thinking," she said, folding a towel. "What if we went away this weekend? Just us. Somewhere quiet." "Like a reset?" I asked. She nodded eagerly. "Yeah, a reset." I forced a smile. "Sounds perfect." She beamed. I watched her like she was an actress who didn't realize the curtain had already dropped. The show was over, but she was still reciting lines. Over the next few days, I made my moves silently. I transferred the utilities out of her name, called the bank and froze our joint account, converted it into 2 separate branches under the same umbrella, citing fraud concerns. Easy enough with the right wording. I made a private backup of every file I had: emails, photos, texts, timestamps, lock logs, and video footage. All cataloged, all stored offline, all neatly labeled. The hoodie footage alone would ruin her credibility if it came to court. Add the wine glass, the late-night entries, the tech booth confirmation. It wasn't even a contest. At night, I lay beside her while she scrolled through her phone, thumbs dancing across the screen with the same casual confidence of someone who still believed they were the smartest person in the room. "You're quiet again," she said one night. "Just tired." She rolled over and pressed her back against me. "Don't be tired on our trip. I want it to be good. I think we need this." I didn't respond. She fell asleep a few minutes later. The next morning, I met with Jonathan's process guy. A short man named Alan with a shaved head and a voice like gravel. "She work from home?" he asked. "Sometimes. Want her served there? Or at work?" "Neither," I said. "I want it done by email first. Subject line, for review. Let her open it on her own time. Then, physical copy delivered to her desk the next morning." Alan nodded. "Clean. Cold. You got it." "Thanks. She's not gonna like this, you know? I'm not doing it for her." That evening, Jane came home with a bottle of red and a smile. Trevor needs to borrow a screwdriver, she said while dropping her purse. He's building new shelves in his apartment. Of course he is. She kissed my cheek. You mind? Not at all. I handed her the screwdriver from the garage. She winked like we shared some private joke. Later that night, I sat in the living room while she texted someone with her screen tilted just slightly away from me. I didn't even bother trying to see it. I knew who it was. I knew what it said. I didn't need more proof. I already had everything. She asked what movie I wanted to watch. I told her anything was fine. We settled on a comedy. She laughed at all the right places, leaned her head on my shoulder like the version of her I used to know. It meant nothing. By morning, the file had been emailed. By noon, the papers were on her desk. Jonathan sent me a one-word confirmation. Delivered. I waited. All day I waited. Jane didn't text, didn't call, didn't even come home. She vanished like a ghost that had finally been spotted and had nowhere left to hide. That night, I pulled up the camera footage from the front porch, one of the side angles slightly obscured by a potted plant. There she was, standing at Trevor's door, kissing him before she walked inside. No hesitation, no guilt, just casual ownership. The confidence of a woman who thought she was still in control. She didn't know the judge would see those kisses, that he'd see the fob usage, that he'd hear her voice saying, "He's probably home watching a documentary." She didn't know the wine-stained glasses had already been logged, that the receipts from restaurants she never mentioned had timestamps that lined up perfectly with Trevor's known work breaks. She thought it was her game. It never was. It was mine now. In court, her attorney, a woman named Melissa something, tried to play the equity angle. Claimed Jane supported the business emotionally. Claimed she was part of the growth. Said she was entitled to half. Jonathan didn't even flinch. He pulled up the podcast interview. Played the clip. Jane's voice filled the room. "Oh, this is my husband's business. I just support him." He slid the timeline across the table. Assets moved before discovery. Business restructured. No paper trail in her name. All legal. All clean. Then came the footage. Jane answering the door in my hoodie. Trevor behind her. The look on the judge's face said enough. They didn't even finish their argument. She walked away with nothing. No business share. No spousal support. Not even the house. I didn't smile when it ended. I didn't celebrate. There was no joy in the destruction. Only the quiet satisfaction of finally stepping out of the role I'd been forced to play. The clueless husband, the background extra in someone else's love story. The silence afterward was deep, unsettling even. Felt like walking out of a theater after the last scene. The credits rolling. No music. Just the slow return of real life pressing in from the corners. For the first time in months, there were no questions left. Only facts. Jane had gambled on a man who watched, waited, and refused to burn down the house just because she lit a match in the dark. She wanted chaos. I gave her consequences. The morning after she kissed Trevor at his door, the divorce filing hit her inbox and her desk. No warning, no conversation, just cold, legal precision. I watched on the porch camera as she returned home late, saw the envelope and froze. She didn't come inside. Instead, she sat in her car for almost an hour, staring at the documents. Her hands were shaking. The next day, her lawyer tried to fight for half the business. But the files, the footage, and her own words unraveled every claim. She walked into court thinking she held the upper hand, walked out with nothing. No house, no stake, no leverage. Just silence. She tried to text me that night. "We can fix this." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to fix. She chose her role and now she was living in it. We met once more at a quiet cafe, neutral ground. Jane wore the coat I gave her years ago, like nostalgia might soften what was coming. I handed her the final papers. No anger, no parting words. She looked at me like she was still searching for the version of me who'd chase her. But he wasn't there. I stood, nodded, and left. The next morning, I changed the business name. The old sign came down while she watched from her car, parked across the street. I didn't look her way. No need. The show was over. No applause. No encore. Just an ending. Clean one. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free, not victorious, not bitter. Just free. Sometimes, the quietest exits echo the loudest.